saw a piece of heaven waiting patient for me, and I was running far away. Would I run off the wall someday? Nobody knows, nobody knows. I was dancing in the rain, I felt alive and I can't complain. But no, take me home where I belong. I can't take it anymore.
Hailing frequency broadcasting.
There is no escape. Don't make me destroy you.
We have the Borg. Lower your shields and surrender your ships. We will add your biological and technological distinctiveness to our
Quite an experience to live in fear, isn't it?
Well, hello everybody. Well, it's good to see everybody there, and it's been a while since I've done one of these episodes here of Trekker Critique, and I wanted to talk a bit about Star Trek Discovery. But first, I want to show you something here. Get that damn thing dislodged here. Come out of there, you. Okay. I went and bought this here at Wally World. It's little DeLoreans here from Back to the Future, and the top one is from the first movie. This was from the second movie, and this one's from the third. You know, because the DeLorean changed in each film, you know, a little bit, and so they made like a DeLorean for every film, which is pretty neat. And they're small, you know, they're not very big, but I think they're die-cast metal, so it's not like little plastic cars. They're little, you know, Matchbox quality kind of cars. So it's pretty cool. And so I went and I got this set. It was pretty cheap because, you know, I'd seen them around, but I was always looking for something else to buy when I was looking, and I always passed by this thing, but I always kept a mental note in my mind to get one before they were gone, so I finally did. Because, you know, I like Back to the Future, which is one of my favorite film franchises. So, glad I got that. So, anyway, let me give you a little bit of what happened here. Netflix, as some of you know, took most of their Trek content right off their streaming service, which pissed me the hell off. I canceled Netflix until I guess the next Stranger Things season comes out, whenever the hell that is. But I'm done with them because they piss me off. You don't fuck with my routine. Okay? You don't mess with my routine and get away with it. Okay? And, you know, I wrote to them like 3 years ago, and I said, as long as you keep Star Trek on Netflix, I'm always going to be a customer. And as soon as they took it off, you know, I said adios. So that only left one other place I can watch it, and I had to get Paramount Plus. Now that channel, that streaming service sucks, okay? And the reason it sucks is because it's not smooth operating like Netflix is, okay? I have to boot it up 3 times to get it to work on the Fire Stick. Why? Why must you always get in my face every time I'm sitting in this chair? Why? Sit. 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 10-month-old cat. Oh, never had a cat that young before. She's just into everything. Okay, anyway, I had to get Paramount Plus. That's the only other place I can get my streaming service. Now, people say, well, why don't you have DVDs of it all? That's because I went through my DVD collection here a long time back because I had way too many DVDs and I had no place to put them. Okay, I had about 2,000 DVDs, and that's more than so I said, this is it. Okay, I have to make sacrifices here for space because I live in an apartment. I don't live in a house of my own choosing here, so I had to sell my DVDs, and I did most of them. Okay, I kept the ones that I really wanted, which are just a few of them there that I have, like box sets, special editions, or something like that of something. But the rest of them I sold. Okay, and that includes, what? Get off of that. Right. And that includes some of my Star Trek episodes. Stop it, stop it, stop it. Why are you doing this to me? No! Oh, God. And, hold on a second. Boy, if you ever get a cat, never get a cat that's younger than a year old, because you're going to lose your friggin' mind. Okay? Okay, so, like I said, Paramount Plus's streaming service is like, it doesn't even come close to the quality you get with Netflix. So, because with Netflix, you can fast forward, you can pause, you can rewind, and it's not going to jam up the signal. With Paramount, once you got the show running, okay, you better leave it as it is. Don't mess with it, because if you do, you're going to probably lose the ability to continue watching the rest of it. Don't pause it, don't rewind it, don't fast forward it, because the damn thing will just lock up, and then it'll throw you to this, oh, our signal's busted or so good, we can't play this anymore. That's what you get, okay? And don't write to them about it, because they don't answer their friggin' emails. So, Paramount has a long way to go to learn how to be a Netflix copycat, okay? So anyway, I got that, and at least now I can watch my Star Trek videos, okay, on TV. Now I know you're saying, well, you should have kept your DVDs. True, but here's the thing. I mean, the DVDs, they come in boxes that are that thick, and and when you got that coupled with other movies that you have, you take up a lot of space, shelf space, okay? I've only got maybe a couple of hundred DVDs now, and they fit just nicely into a closet in the living room here, and it doesn't take up that much space. I don't have to have them hanging off the ceiling or anything like that anymore. So you can't drink coffee. So that's why I don't have them anymore. Okay, yeah, it wasn't easy getting rid of them because I paid a lot for them, but at the same time, it's like, well, I'm watching them on streaming, and no matter where I go, I can always access my movies that way. Doesn't matter. I don't have to take a whole cluster of DVDs with me. If I go someplace on a vacation, I can just log into whatever streaming service I have and watch them that way, which is a lot more convenient, I think, and you don't have to clutter all your living space with it. So it wasn't an easy thing to do, but I had to do it. It's one of those things in life where you got to do something. You have to make a change, otherwise the problem becomes a monster before you know it. And so I did. Did I keep it? Well, of course I kept like I said, my special editions box sets of like the movies, Star Trek movies, because they got like interviews and they got behind the scenes stuff in there. I kept those things, the anniversary ones or whatever. Kept those because they don't stream that on there. They don't give you those. You can't watch those. So that's what I did, and so now I got Paramount Plus. I only got the $4.99 package. I don't know if there's a name for that, but it's like the like the low price one where you get commercials in your stuff. I don't care about that. All right, you know, I don't mind the commercials because they don't have many. They got one or two, and that's it. And they're just, you know, so it doesn't really faze me. Netflix, they had some of their shows they would pause at the commercial, but not all of them. The movies they didn't, but. And in YouTube, you know, if you got YouTube stuff, they always got commercials and that. And I figure, well, if they're getting commercials and that's money, I don't have to pay them in order to watch what I want to watch. So I can live with that, I guess. So, anyway, while I was, now to get to the point here, while I was watching, I watched the first episode of Prodigy because I just, out of curiosity, I wanted to see how animation would be with this Star Trek thing, which I thought was better than the other one, Lower Decks. I didn't even watch that because I knew that was going to look like shit anyway. But so I tried watching Prodigy, and what I saw was the first episode was basically a copycat of Star Wars's style of writing, the story and everything. Okay, it really felt like I was watching a Star Wars animation. Okay, it didn't feel Star Trek at all, even though they had familiar names and stuff they were dropping in there. I didn't give two shits about that, and I think the spaceship they're using is sort of like reminiscent of the Millennium Falcon. I mean, it's like, come on, you know, you guys, you're just ripping off of the Star Wars stuff. They had nothing original about it. So I just, you know, after the first episode, I was like, yeah, screw this thing. I don't give a shit if Kate Mulgrew has her voice in there or nothing. That's not enough to keep me watching that. So I shut that off. So I started watching some of the other stuff on there, like MacGyver and stuff, because they got other shows that I used to like watching there back in the 80s. So I was watching stuff like that. And then, you know, one evening there, I began to watch Star Trek Enterprise, and I was watching some of those, and then I was getting kind of bored, so I said, you know, there's nothing else to watch. I mean, because you know, there was barely anything on TV, and I was like, well, you know, maybe I'll give Discovery a try again. You know, that's when you're at sea and you're the only person and you're looking around at water and you're thirsty, you say, oh, I guess I'll try the seawater and see what happens, you know. So I was like, well, I'm gonna see, you know, how this shit has shaken down since I quit watching it. And so I started with season 3, which was where they end up in the future there. So I started watching it from that, and I was like, yeah, okay, you know. And there's this things were a little weird in that season. It just I don't know, it just, you know, it didn't feel like it was very focused that much in the season 3. There was a lot of threads they left over from season 2 where I stopped watching it, and they tried to tie it up in that third season. They got rid of Giorgio, which I thought was fine because her character was really getting sickening in that season anyway. So I was like, yeah, get rid of her because she's no good to the series anyway. So I'm glad they shipped her off to God knows where. And then they introduced Booker there, I guess. And he seemed like sort of a Han Solo kind of character, which I was like a little bit annoyed at the fact that they kind of made him that way. But he seemed like he was, there was more to him than that in the season 3. And I like the idea that, you know, he kind of had a, you know, relationship. He developed a relationship with Michael, and trying to think here what else. It seemed like it was a good beginning for a character development there to kind of get Michael out of her rut that she was stuck in for the first 2 seasons. And so they skipped ahead, I think, in time in the story. They went like, what, a year or something like that, 2 years later. Because what happened is when Michael went into the opening in space in the second season, Discovery was behind her, so they had to split in time. She got there a year before they did because she was ahead of them. So that kind of explained why it was a year later, because she was waiting around for them to come through, figured out they'd show up at a certain time, and bingo, there they were. So we catch up with her. We find out that her and Booker had a really close relationship that developed, which was nice, but it felt kind of cheated out of actually seeing a development with her, to see her humanity, which I was like, well, that's nice, but we don't get to see this relationship develop. We're just supposed to accept that it happened and that's it. But it would have been nice to take the audience through that experience to see that Michael has, she's not just a Mary Sue. Okay, you know what I'm saying? Because as a Mary Sue, it becomes a very boring character, because everything she does is always going to end up good for her, So it would have been nice to see her and Booker kind of go through that year, a season with just focus on the two of them. That would have kind of fleshed her character out a whole lot better than they spent in the first 2 seasons, because I think from all we know is that she's supposed to be some kind of a talented Starfleet wannabe or something. I don't know. Okay, and that story kind of gets boring, because it's nothing you can put her in where she can't figure her way out. So so to see her actually do something where she's being asked to do something other than being Starfleet would have been an interesting story to tell. So they skipped that whole part, and we just jump up into seeing Discovery finally make it home, and then they of course the fact that everything has changed in the future, Federation's all falling apart, then nobody can travel at warp, which felt kind of a gimmicky thing for that season. It just seemed like it didn't even really explain it well enough to make it understandable. Like I said, it just feels like with everything that we've seen prior to Discovery ever hitting it on the screen, we've seen Star Trek ships using all kinds of manner of travel through space, and a lot of it didn't even require anything like dilithium crystals to be used. And I felt like, well, you guys, there was a lot of ways they could have got around that. Even if what happened, those ships would have still been able to cross the galaxy. Some of them probably would have been able to develop means of travel that would have taken years off of traveling from one end of the galaxy to the other by using wormholes, multi-space corridors, and all these things that we've seen, especially on Voyager. Voyager was always good at finding all kinds of alien races that found ways to travel through space. Some of them didn't even have to leave their own planet. They just made portals to go to everywhere. So I felt like that was really designed to be just some stupid plot device that didn't have any reason to be there. So it was done. But you got to see a lot of things start to change a little bit better. They made Tilly a little more believable, I think, as a character. I never really liked her from the beginning because she seemed like the comedy relief on the show, and it's like, well, it's fine to have a comedic relief, like Dr. McCoy, but they took it too far with her. They made her like this bumbling, stumbling idiot that's trips and falls and lands in a sewer and comes out with 2 gold watches in both hands. It's like, come on. I mean, it's at least when they did that with Barclay, you got to find out why he was that way. Okay, with Tilly, it's like she just seems like she's Chevy Chase of the future or something. It's like I really didn't like the way they kind of pulled her character off. She didn't even look like somebody realistically that could actually serve in Starfleet, because you would think they would want some people of a certain fortitude mentally to be able to be there. I mean, so I felt like, so I never really liked Tilly. I think she was just an annoying character on the show that I really could have lived without. And so, and then there's, Stamets, which, he was such a hard one to figure out, personality-wise, and it didn't really help much in that 3rd season. And I didn't like the, having Rio on there. Rio was like, is it would it kill her to crack a smile once in a while? You know, and then she's like, no, you know, and she has it, and she drops a friggin' joke somewhere where you're supposed to laugh, but you can't laugh because, you know, nobody else is laughing at what she says. Okay, you know, it's like she's saying jokes, but without a laugh track, you wouldn't even know that they were funny. So it's like, you know, what's her purpose on there but to be the Dr. McCoy of the engine room or something? You know, they already have a chief engineer. Why would they need another one? You know, it's like, so I figured, like, you know, Rio's place in the show, even at this point, still seems kind of mysterious. Like, you know, why is she even there? You know, it's like, you know, I don't know. I mean, I know on TNG they used to have assistant chief engineers and stuff, but they kind of dropped that after a while when they would, after they got past, season 2. So it was really just Geordi and background characters, but they didn't have an assistant anymore after that. But yeah, Rio is a character they could do without, because I really don't have any, like, interest in seeing what happens with her on the show. So, but season 3 at least ended with a hopeful note where you got to see that maybe now something can begin with Discovery that they've been wasting all this time to get to. And so I was like, well, okay, so it ended now sort of like the way it should have began in the first place with season 1, is now maybe we'll actually start to see people doing some exploration here for once. Okay, I didn't like how it ended with the reasoning they came up with for the burn and all that. It was really kind of it was just, the burn itself was a silly idea, and the answer of it was just as equally silly. So it was like, you know, it felt like that was the whole thing about that season was, oh, now we have to undo the burn. That was it, okay? And it's like, it seemed like a simplistic story that could have been told in like maybe 2 episodes, and they just, you know, but they added so much filler in there that it just felt like they were dragging this thing out for 12 episodes, which I didn't like. So after that, I kind of started watching some other Star Trek. You know, of course, Picard was on at the time, so I was watching that. And so of course, they don't have all those episodes out yet, so you're watching that a piece at a time. I hate that. I mean, it's, especially when the story is just one story and you have to wait and, you know, okay, it's like, you know, you don't get to see, you know, some kind of different story for the following week. You have to, you're kind of tied to this one until it's done. So then I figured, well, since season 4 was all wrapped up on Discovery, I decided to watch that. And but I was kind of a little bit amazed. It was an improvement, actually, over that 3rd season. The cast actually started to feel like it was finally gelling together as a team. Okay, it felt like there was a little more of a camaraderie with the people than there was in the previous seasons. They finally figured out who was going to sit in the captain's chair. Okay, eventually. Everybody knew it would end up being her anyway, but it seemed like between Saru and her, it's like, you know, give me the keys, and then here you take the keys, and no, those keys, you know, it's like, well, make up your friggin' mind. Who's going to sit in the goddamn captain's chair, okay? So I felt like it, you know, they finally got that shit out of the way, and they gave the command to her finally. So they started off with, you know, with finally doing something there to begin the 4th season with this DMA thing here that was threatening the whole galaxy essentially, which in a way kind of reminded me of V'ger, you know, in Star Trek The Motion Picture. It felt like a rip-off of that a little bit, but as it played out, it didn't end. It wasn't like that. It was this different kind of way of telling a story, but it had nothing to do about looking for God or anything like that. It was just aliens that had created it, and when they weren't aware of what they were doing, which is you know, it seems like a common thing when you're talking about races that are more evolved than others doing things, and they don't seem to think about the consequences of what they're doing. Okay, and the thing I think that really got this ball going here for character development is when Booker's world blew up. I think if they hadn't had rolled that in there, I don't think Booker would have been a very interesting character that season. But because they destroyed his home world, now he's got some character now. Now this character is something you want to watch. We get to see a side to him that isn't so cooperative and, you know, agreeing with Michael all the time. You know what I'm saying? We don't get to see this, you know, I'll just follow your coattails wherever you go. It just seemed like he was the fifth wheel on the ship. He was just there all the time as a passenger, and there was no reason why he should be there. So, but now he had a reason, and he had a lot of emotion, and there was a lot there that he had to contend with, and it started to put friction between him and Michael, and that was good, because now Michael she's dealing with something that's out of her control for once. Okay, and it was like, okay, so now she's got to deal with a relationship that's on the rocks, and a man who's hell-bent on revenge or something for the death of his entire race. And I was like, well, finally. So now the story got more interesting now, okay? And, you know, it was, you know, them trying to figure out how they were going to deal with it. And it felt like the plot to the story was quite overwhelming, I think. It felt like something that, you know, even now being in the 31st century, humans don't have any idea how they're going to deal with this, even then. Okay, so we didn't have this overwhelming arc of, oh, future technology, you know, it takes care of everything and all this stuff. And I was like, well, okay, good. You know, now we can put that aside. That no matter what they got for technology, they're still helpless. Okay, they still can't answer everything with technology this time. They're going to have to deal with the possibility that all their worlds are going to be destroyed, and there's not a damn thing they can do about it. Okay, so I was like, good. I mean, this is like Star Trek: The Motion Picture. I mean, they're sending the ship out into a unknown. They don't know if they're going to have a chance in hell of making it back. Okay, and this is discovery and you know, learning about a new thing that we haven't had, you know, in a long time. So in the meantime, there were certain things they had to do before they could get there, and then of course Booker, you know, he meets up with this other guy from a different dimension, which that was a kind of a weird thing, this, you know, being from another dimension. I mean, it was interesting, but it was weird. I mean, it's like a character from just out of nowhere shows up, and, you know, he wants to do, you know, he wants to avenge, you know, the loss that he suffered through this thing. And it just, you know, I guess it kind of made Booker, you know, sort of have a, how do you say it, a balance between him and the other guy, that he, you know, he could see himself in him and stuff, and that was like it was designed to be the moment at the end of the season where he's got to decide if he wants to keep following this guy off a cliff or do the right thing and do what Michael was trying to explain to him. So I felt like, you know, that was a good book kind of character moment there for him, is that it didn't really require Michael to sway him. It was him really kind of coming to this decision on his own to see that what he was doing was wrong. Okay, and of course Reno happened to be there, which I thought was an annoying adding thing to that, but I don't think she was really needed there. But you know, as the story went, she ended up there, and so finally, you know, like I said, he finally comes to his own understanding, you know, that you know, there's no bringing his world back, and there's no point in, you know, destroying a whole race of people, doing what they essentially did to him by compounding the matter, by destroying, you know, genocide on them. So, you know, at the end they were kind of chasing you know, him around the galaxy with his Millennium Falcon wannabe, you know, and so I thought that it was really a really fascinating way that they kind of brought him out from the shadows of from season 3, okay, and they kind of made him really more of the forefront of the story, which was really good. And the other characters they brought on there, like the president, was Cardassian, I guess, is what she's looked like, or at least partly Cardassian. And then they had some of these other people, like the general from Earth, who I knew, somehow I kind of knew she was going to be some kind of a turncoat during the story, because you know, she seemed kind of militant in season 3 when they first met her, and she seemed kind of unyielding. So when they put her in this, I figured, yeah, okay, so they set you up with this is the way she is, and now she's going to be a problem here later in the story. So I was right about that. I could see that coming. But I was really surprised at the end. I thought they had killed Booker off when the transporter thing seemed to fail, okay? Which has always been a tradition in Star Trek, that the last second they beam you out, you know, during some kind of catastrophe, and you make it. You know, like, it's been since the original series on through all the years. That's been sort of the tradition. But this time, he didn't show up on the bridge, and everybody accepted that he didn't make it. He died, okay? But as the story would have it, of course, he didn't. He came back because the aliens that they were trying to kill originally had managed to save him, or at least, how they explain it, they kept the beam in stasis because they figured it was something important that because they tried to do this at the last second, that must have been something important, so we better save that, not let that, you know, it was kind of a weird explanation as to why these aliens did what they did, but at the same time, it wasn't too far-fetched, because if these beings have that kind of technological advancement, you know, maybe they would try to step in and interfere with something if they felt like there was some kind of reason that they were doing this at the very last moment before the you know, that the ship blew up, okay? So they saved it. So I was like, okay, I guess I can buy that. And, you know, it doesn't, I mean, it's kind of a weird thing, but, you know, these are aliens. They never met people before. They, like I said, they never realized these life forms were higher advanced, and like they said, and they didn't think anything of it. It's like, okay, there's a hill full of ants, and we got to destroy all the ant hills, and who gives a shit about the ants? So basically, they were looking at us like we look at ants. Okay, but then they find out the ants have brains, and they have feelings, and they got thoughts, and they have intelligence, and now the story's different. Now the aliens figure out, oh shit. But that was why I was thinking, why would they bother with an ant thing or something like that? I don't know. Anyway, it felt kind of an odd happenstance in the story. So, but through the thing, that one moment there where Michael thinks that he's dead, that was probably the only time I've ever seen that character actually act. Okay, or I'm sorry, the actress actually act in this show. Okay, the rest of the time she's so busy giving speeches before they leave for a mission, and everything is so perfect with her, like she's got the answer or the comeback for every friggin' argument. And you know, even in season 4, she was getting annoying again. Okay, that she was really getting on my nerves again, because she was acting too goody two-shoes. Okay, here's a person who's just been given command of a starship for the first time now, and apparently everybody thinks she's ready for it, no matter what her history was. Okay, and I'm surprised that it ended up the way it did, but she's given the keys to Discovery finally by the Admiral, and they send her out on when all of the Federation is looking at disaster again. They send out her. You know, at least with Star Trek the Motion Picture, they send out somebody who's had years of experience dealing with unknowns. Okay, with her, I mean, yeah, she's had some experience in the 23rd century. Okay, and she screwed up. You know, her ideas on how to deal with the Klingons and blew up in her face. So here's a person whose credibility, you know, was really not that great, and yet they sent her out to deal with this galactic problem here of you know, epic proportions. And I'm thinking, well, that doesn't feel very realistic to me. But you know, if that's what they want to do, then we'll have to agree with that. Agree to disagree. It's not the way I would have done it in the story, but okay. But let's take a commercial.
Dear CEO, what's it gonna take for you to do something? Yeah, do you even care?
Climate change affects all of us.
This is your chance to do something good.
Be a part of the entertainment value of a lifetime.
I loved it. It was the best performance I've seen in a lifetime.
I loved the show. I liked it very much. He's a very entertaining man. It's well worth the money.
Now appearing in Charlottetown, coming to Halifax November 6th to the 18th, and St. John November 20th through the 26th.
We quit smoking. Well, I'm not smoking. And I didn't think anybody could do that.
15,000 cigarettes a year times 35 years.
So I've been smoking for 45 years. It's the easiest thing in the world to quit. I've done it 1,000 times.
Cigarette helps you break the nicotine addiction, and it works in as little as 7 days.
I smoked 43 years. I quit just like that. I thought I was just going to go nuts wanting a cigarette. I never did. I was just wonderful.
5 packs a day for a while. I'm doing great now.
She bought it and said, try it, and I reluctantly, half-heartedly tried it. But it was so easy that just breezed through it. Didn't have the urge to eat anymore.
As a matter of fact, I lost about 2 pounds.
No way did I want to gain weight, and I was.
When they offered that money-back guarantee, I thought I just have to try it.
No matter how much you smoke, no matter how long you've been smoking, with Cigarette you'll quit or your money back. Guaranteed. All for hundreds of dollars less than other major programs.
On the other programs, I guess I spent around $2,500 to $3,000.
When you think of the price, it's just amazing.
Think of what you can do with $1,000.
Well, I figured it up at 25 cents a pack, and I could have bought 2 of the homes that I live in now.
And without smoking, we've got a few more years to go together. Tell them to do what I did. Just order it.
I'd say pick up that phone like I did and call the toll-free number.
Order your Cigarette now. Call 1-800-872-9800. With the Cigarette program, you're guaranteed to stop smoking in as little as 7 days, without withdrawal, without gaining weight, and without spending hundreds of dollars. To save COD fees, have your credit card ready and call toll-free 1-800-872-9800 or send $19.95 plus $4 postage and handling to Cigarette. Box 4444, Carlsbad, California, 92008. Or call toll-free 1-800-872-9800.
Okay, everybody, welcome back. Okay, so, as I was saying about Captain Burnham, and by the way, I didn't like the uniforms that they made for this show. Why did they change them from season 3? I don't know. But these uniforms, they looked, they were way too dressy for duty uniforms, okay? So it really set a different tone on the set. When everybody's walking around with these what look like special uniforms that, you know, like you see in the military that are only used for gatherings or something like that. That's what they look like, and they're really too flashy. It was just too dressed up, as it's always been. I mean, the sets are still cluttered with screens and holographic crap that gets in the way of seeing the actors act, and it's just I don't know. It's just, that's a whole other issue right there. Okay, that's probably never going to change with Star Trek from now on, because that's the thing of the 21st century with movies now, is everything's got to be holographic 3D crap, that floats through the air. So anyway, to get back to the story, up to that point, Michael was sort of like a very unimpressive kind of character yet again for another season. She just seemed very like they want this character to be the perfect character, the perfect captain, the perfect Starfleet officer, that nobody understands how great she is. She's always got to prove herself, and then she has this this fucking speech always at the end of her tongue to explain away why she can do things and everybody else thinks she can't, and and why she can convince people to do things where the president can't. It's like, she's got the skills that, for everything. It's like if you ever play those role-playing games, okay, and you design a character that's got 100% for every ability, right? Well, your character's so perfect that you can't even kill it. Okay. And I feel like that's what they were doing again with this season, and I was really getting annoyed with that. But I was happy to see that they actually took Saru out of the friggin' Discovery kind of environment in the show, and kind of gave him his own kind of thing where he's kind of talking to ambassadors and he's kind of developing a relationship with the Vulcan, and that was like, that's I like that part of the story. I think, it was good to see a little bit of humanity coming out of that character for once, and to have it happen where you got people that are really different physically in appearance and from different worlds, and yet you get to see that Saru all this time really had sort of a need to have this kind of a relationship through this whole series, which she never really got too much of a hint of, but they kind of leaked it out a little bit in season 3 when he first meets her, and then they really expanded on that in this season, and I thought that was a nice little side story there that I thought was really good for his character to develop. We get to see that he does have another side. They took him away from that world he was at the beginning there, where he was basically just there for whatever, to deal with the kid that they found, or the other alien of his species that they found on that world there with the dilithium crystals, and so it was like, well, why is he even in the show if this is all it's going to be of him? So they finally took him off of that and they put him back on the ship, and then they had him doing things as like a first officer, and but it felt like they were building his character up. There was a reason they brought him back, and that was a good little story there for him. Tilly, finally, I was kind of surprised they kind of took her off the ship, and I was like, oh, good. I was like really happy that we're not going to see much of her then the rest of the season. So, but what they did with her is, yes, they did take her off the ship, but then they gave her an assignment that really was more befitting her character and her personality, was to educate the young people going in there on how to be Starfleet officers. And I'm like, well, that's probably a more fitting role for her than being on a starship, because when you're dealing with other people, you grow up inside as you're educating the kids. So I think that was a nice little addition, and they kind of, her personality kind of settled down a little bit in the season, where they gave her some responsibility for once. And she had to rise to the occasion when it was in the shuttle, where she had to take the cadets on a little mission, and it was sort of like the Galileo 7 all over again from TOS. But it was a really good sombering moment for her to have this responsibility, and the guy with the suit coat, I don't know who the fuck he is. He's sort of like the guy the guy that smokes a cigarette in X-Files. It's like, who is he? Where does he come from? You know, he's sort of like this bland character that doesn't have a purpose on the show, but he shows up, you know, in these situations, which, you know, is really a weird character. I don't even know, you know, what role he plays in Starfleet, but he's the one that convinced her to get off the ship and do something that he thinks she would be good at, you know. And I was like, well, good. So she kind of, you know, while she can bump into walls at Starfleet Academy, but then at the same time she's going to have to force to teach authority, which means she's going to have to be disciplined, more disciplined, in order to teach these kids how to behave as Starfleet officers. So I was like, good, you know, that's a more realistic way to take that character to develop later on and flesh her out in that kind of a setting, instead of having her on the ship doing what she's been doing for the last 2 seasons, like you know, kind of goofing around and, you know, whatever. Okay, now they put her in something that I think is more befitting her. Okay, and so at least they got her character locked down in a better way, and I was glad of that. And really, I didn't really miss her through the rest of the season, when, you know, they were doing everything else. But towards the end, she was with Admiral Vance, and she was helping with the evacuation. And I liked that little moment there between the two of them, where they were sitting there drinking away, you know, the last couple hours of their life, you know, where they thought they were all gonna die. And she finally opens up to him about things, and he kind of, you know, drops his rank and, you know, sits down and talks to her for once. And I felt, well, finally, you know, let the humanity come out of these characters. I mean, because Vance up to that point was really kind of stolid, kind of strict, kind of, you know, under stress, and we don't really get to see much of this man's inner self, but they finally let it come out in this season here. And I felt like, well, now we get to know this guy a bit better, because he's really a good actor, the guy, because I've seen him in like Resident Evil films and stuff like that, where he's in, and he always does well as an actor. And I think the role they gave him initially was just too constraining for him as an actor, but they finally let it out in this season. So I was like, you know, now we get to like the guy, and you know, they might be killing him off. So so yeah, there was a good moment. That was a good moment there between the two of them. And it was kind of a, like, you know, well, we did all we could, so that's it for us, you know, and how are we going to deal with the end, you know? And then we finally get to see his mysterious family for a few seconds, you know, because up to that point, he was talking about his family, you know, not having seen them a while, and he was, you know, and it's like, well, where is your family? Where are they? On the station? Where the hell are they? And at the last minute, when the story was at the last episode, they finally get to show a quick shot of his daughter and his wife coming to him and stuff. And I was like, oh, there's the mystery family. That's who he's married to. So that was nice to finally see that. Finally, this season here at the end ended on such a hopeful note that I think that if they ever wanted to stop Discovery, see, this would be the best place to end the show, really, and let writers from outside, you know, fill in the gaps with books and stuff like that. Because the way this season ended, it felt like a series finale. Okay, like this is it. This is no more Discovery after this. Of course, that's not true. There's going to be another season. They're already working on it. But if they wanted to end it, now would be the place to end it. But I quickly think about Enterprise and how season 4 of their show was the best season out of the 4 that they made. Okay, the other seasons always had something not right about it, and they didn't like it or something. But season 4, they seemed to do what they should have been doing from the very beginning. Okay, and that's when they ended it because the fans had bitched for 3 years about that show. That I guess Paramount figured, you know, we're done with this. Okay, that no matter what we do, the fans aren't going to like it. Okay. And they didn't bother to read the feedback from season 4, and they just ended it. Okay, they wrote that season to end it, and that's what they did. So people have been sort of kicking themselves in the ass because they saw that there was some gelling coming together in the show, and it was finally making sense. And then of course it was over. So it was an opportunity that was lost, you know. And I think you know, as this season of Discovery ends, and it seems to end on a higher note. I mean, I think season 4 was the best of the 4 seasons they've made so far. This actually felt more Star Trek than the other seasons before it. Okay, they are actually dealing with something unknown. Okay, it was a mystery as to what the hell they were dealing with, and they had to work that out. And the things that we're coming up with were new. Okay, we got to see these characters deal with more human issues, whereas before it seemed more plot driven in the previous seasons. This time there was plot, but then there was also the writers wanted to do something with these characters for once. Okay, they wanted to show some humanity in them. For Burnham, it didn't seem to come but till towards the end, where we actually get to see her humanity come out on the bridge, and we don't really see that much in the season. She's sort of just, you know, the captain of the week in the chair, you know, until they give it to somebody else. But, you know, she's I mean, that was pretty much her duty. But the one aspect of her character was the relationship between her and Book. That was really which was the only really interesting part of her story. Being captain on the ship was really kind of, you know, well, how long is she going to have that till they hand it back over to Saru, you know? You know, so her character really was, you know, interesting only in that one way. Okay, we all knew. I mean, I'm not going to say we all knew. I knew that her, you know, her being the captain of the ship meant she was always going to have an answer, always going to be able to think her stuff out of problems, and you know what I'm saying, and be able to do things and survive it. But you know, having that Mary Sue aspect to her character, and then she had that let her hair down thing with Booker, which was a lot better part of the story with her than the other part. So when the two of them, those things come together at the end, where she's got no choice but for once to drop her captain rank and let her humanity come out to see how she was going to deal with it, I was like, oh, so there is a human underneath that character. Okay, for once, you know, she doesn't get to have it her way. You know, she can't speech her way out of this problem, or she can't pat everybody on the back or give everybody a hug, group hug moment, you know, where, oh, we've all done our duty for Starfleet and we're so patriotic and all this shit. Okay, so it wasn't that kind of a moment, where those kind of moments were getting on my nerves with her. So I was like, well, good, finally. But like I said, then even though they brought Booker back, it wasn't like she got him back. I mean, they took him away because he had to do penance for what he tried to do in the story, and so he's out there. They might bring him back later, I don't know. Okay, the next season, who knows? But they leave the door open that they might bring him back for something else, if they come up with a good reason to bring him back. I don't think they should just bring him back to bring him back. They should only bring him back if there's a good story to justify his character being back on Discovery. Because if they bring him back just as background or something for Michael, then they're going to kind of abuse that, which they kind of created in this season. You know, they're going to ruin that whole thing by bringing Booker back to the way he was in season 3. Okay, so I figure that would be the best way, if he's not going to show up, to kind of bring an end to that, you know, thing there with the character. And then I'm trying to think what else. Oh yeah, the one thing that I thought was kind of funny is when the general's deliberately does a suicide run on a Booker ship and crashes into it, but it seems like the only thing that breaks on the ship on Booker's ship is just like the front control panels, and that was it. Okay, and even then they were still working. It's like, well, what the hell is this ship made out of? Neutronium, for Christ's sake? The other ship is like completely destroyed, turned to ashes. but his ship is still running around. It's like, why does this guy even have shields? I mean, he could plow through a fucking asteroid field and the damn thing wouldn't even fall apart. So I thought that was kind of funny. It was like one of those TOS kind of moments where you see this ridiculous thing where, you know, like 1,000 photon torpedoes don't even destroy anything. You know, it's like so I'm thinking, you know, they turned his ship into like this super starship, you know, that's like, it's just this very strange vessel that, you know, it's like Legos, you know, when it's flying, you know, it changes its shape wherever the damn thing is going into something, you know, and it's like, you know, what is this, a transformer or what? You know, it's the dumbest idea for a spaceship I've ever seen. It just, okay, but anyway, yeah, that thing, I laughed my head off when I saw that. I thought that was funny as hell because I was like, you know, they show these two guys getting thrown way in the back of the cockpit and the control panel's blowing up, but yet, you know, the view screen is still there and, you know, the control panels partially work and it's like, well, Jesus, they just suffered, you know, minor damage compared to the other ship that hit them. It's like, well, you think I'm bad? Look at the other guy. I mean, they had to beam the pilot off the thing before it blew up. So I was like, geez, you know, right? I thought that was a funny part there. I mean, maybe it was a little too ridiculous, you know, to be a dramatic moment. You know, I think that's what they were going for. They wanted to make this heart-pounding thing, and then they kind of deflated it when you saw that the ship survived it, and it was like, it's like, well, why the hell did you even attempt in the first place to destroy it when you knew that the ship was strong enough to withstand it? Okay, I mean, why didn't they just shoot at it or something? Instead, she does the first thing she does is do a kamikaze on the thing, right? Well, if they'd have scanned his ship and he knew how tough it was, she would have known that wouldn't have worked. Okay, so but anyway, it was weird. And then for some reason now, I don't know why I was thinking this, but at the end when they finally get to see the aliens, right, which looked like they lived in hell, okay, because it was like, you know, you see all these rocks and this fire and all this crap, and it's like, you know, what the hell is this? They save the devil or something? I mean, because they look like they would be villains the way they made their appearance look, these giant creatures. But when they started to come up from the ground, the first thing that came to my head was hearing Dr. Smith and Lost in Space going, ah! I think that would have been like this friggin' this hilarious moment where you hear his big mouth in the background screaming in fear over seeing these huge creatures, because those creatures look like something they would have come out of Lost in Space. Okay, they really look like these you know, paper mache looking creatures. I mean, I know they use CGI, okay, I know they use CGI for that, but they really look kind of basic, you know, like something you would have seen out of the 50s and 60s, you know, the TV shows back then, but they just, you know, detailed it more. But they really look kind of goofy in a way, these aliens, and it looked like something from Lost in Space, and that's probably why I was thinking of Dr. Smith when the tanks come out from under the ground. and I could just imagine his screaming his head off, you know, and, ah, we're doomed! You know, so I just felt like, oh, geez, you know, these look goofy, but at least they didn't make them you know, sound goofy or something like that. They just looked really weird, you know, like, you know, the way they would show aliens from back in the old days on old science fiction shows. So I just those was one of those two moments in that final episode that kind of gave me the laugh, the giggles, you know, because of what they were showing. But you know, the funny thing is those are the kind of moments everybody remembers when you watch Star Trek, is those moments where the special effects kind of fail, you know, with all the money they probably spent making the aliens, and they come out looking like something from Lost in Space, you know. I mean, it's just, it was really weird, but at the same time, it was kind of refreshing to be able to laugh at something for once in Star Trek, you know, where it seemed like it was kind of a limitation to the show, like, you know, where you just feel like they tried their best, but you know, it fell short. You know, just like you know, like seeing the the Constellation in Doomsday Machine. I mean, you could tell it was a model just by looking at it, and it was in the way it was moving, you know. You can't help but laugh and giggle over stuff like that. And it was kind of refreshing to have a little bit of that in there to laugh at in the show. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just, but there's always something to remember. So like I said, I think season 4 was quite an improvement on the series overall. I think, it started off with a little bit of and then it kind of improved over each episode and built up to a, pretty decent season. And I like the way they ended it, where it could be the end of the story or the beginning of a whole new chapter in Discovery that could open the door to new characters, being introduced on the ship, because you got Tilly doing this thing with the Academy and Booker's gone. Maybe some of the other characters might be, separating from, Discovery. So they could start the next chapter like maybe 5 years later, okay? Because we know what they're going to be doing. They're going to be bringing back more worlds that used to be part of the Federation. So there's no point in retelling that aspect of Star Trek. So they could actually start this years later after Michael's been captain of the Discovery a bit longer, and she's got a lot more experience now, and maybe they can dial her down a little bit, the Mary Sue thing, and get to see that, she's made some mistakes as captain, because remember they were talking about the Kobayashi Maru, how she's, a captain who needs to face a problem like that, where at the end she finally showed that she faced an impossible thing but held herself together, which is what the president was hoping she would see in this captain here. And so what I'd like to see is if they bring her back, do it like years later after they've done quite a few missions, and you get to see that she's gotten some wisdom. She's not so Mary Sue anymore, and that she's lost people and missions, and it's taken a toll on her, and it's also made her a little more believable of a character. And I think that's the time when the show is going to get good, is if they start to be a little bit more realistic with these characters. We get to see that they've changed from the everything is always positive aspect of her, and sort of like what that guy in the suit was sitting here talking about, how he was kind of annoyed with them when he first met him because they walked around with their head up and everything. And that's kind of the way I saw Michael, as a person who's always positive. You can't deflate her. She's always got a speech, and stuff. And that's the way I felt. I kind of agreed with that guy, and I was like, yeah, you know what? I would have felt the same way too if I'd have met these people for the first time. It's like, who the hell are you to come here, acting like that? After the shit we've been through, when you come out here, acting like, oh, everything can be fixed, and so it's like, yeah. I was like, yeah, that's the way my opinion was of the show from the very beginning. Is that especially with her, with Michael, was that she's just way out of character. For the times or something, it might have been acceptable when she was younger, when she was working her way up to be a captain, but by the time you earn that rank in captain, you've already gone through so many missions already that should have been broken of you by the time you've gotten that rank, okay? So with her, I think if they do a season 5, they really should set the time period about 5 years later or something like that, whereas she's been out there with the ship for a long while. Maybe Saru is doing something different now. He's not first officer, and she's got a new first officer, and she's got new characters with different specialties that might complement Michael later in that season, to make her a more interesting character to watch. Okay, and get that freaking positive ship dialed down, just stop it with that. No more speeches before you head out on a mission. It's just, even Picard wouldn't do that at the start of every mission. Okay, and he was always one to give a speech that, at least you learned something from what he was telling you, in his speeches about comparing what's happened in history to what's going, you know. But with her speeches, it's just, oh, let's, you know, puff up the patriotism and let's be happy and positive that we're going to fix everything and everything's going to be all happy, joy after it's all done. You know, it's like, enough of that already, Jesus. You know, God almighty, just say, you know, thrusters ahead and let's get the hell out of here. You know, Jesus, why do we have to be so preachy? You know, enough of that. So if they can get rid of that part, I would be grateful. If they would take that friggin' aspect of her personality out of the equation and bring her back to earth here a little bit, you know. Because even people in the 23rd century weren't perfect. Okay, we saw how many rotten captains were there in the TOS. Okay, there was a lot of corruption in TOS and in TNG. Okay, she's from that era. She wasn't the Holy Ghost, okay, of the 23rd century. Okay, so what? She was adopted sister to Spock. That doesn't mean that she's Jesus. Okay. She's just a human who happened to be living with Vulcans. All right, so you know, let's bring her a little bit back to earth. Okay, she's not Superwoman, and I'm hoping that that's what they'll do when they start season 5 up. But to say that season 4 was a much better season than the others, I have to say yes, it was. I mean, I know a lot of people. I've read the comments, and they said they were really disappointed with the season. But I find myself at odds with Star Trek fans again. I always seem to be at odds with these people all the time. Even when something's good, I have to fight with them. And so I was kind of happier with season 4 because it felt more like Star Trek, even though everybody else felt like it was more just aimless bullshit. Okay, but I was like, well, no, it wasn't aimless, because if you were just focused on the plot of the story, it might have felt like it was dragged out. But I watch these shows to see the characters kind of develop, to see the interest in the characters. That's what was always missing up to that point in Discovery, was that these characters, they were brand new characters that no one's ever met before. Okay, and that's always a difficult thing. Picard, we already know him. We got a history with this character, so we always know what he's going to be doing. Well, like, but these new characters, brand new strangers to us, and they were strangers to us for a long time, and they just never seemed to have any reality to them, a lot of them, you know. They did better this time. I think they made something good out of these characters, and I was like, well, finally, now these characters seem more human, more believable, and something that I might want to revisit in next season. Okay, and hoping that the trend continues, that they keep developing the character there. So maybe stopping Discovery now would be repeating a mistake that was made with Enterprise, and maybe now that it feels like maybe the show is starting to gel with the cast or something, or with these characters, maybe now we could go on with a season 5 and see how that feels. If it feels like these characters are still developing in season 5, then, you know, maybe that's a sign that maybe finally the people at Paramount have finally understood now what the fans have been telling them for 3 years now about what Star Trek is supposed to be. And I think that if they do that, and they continue, that would be good. Now, that's a good sign when you see Strange New Worlds is supposed to come out. If they're getting the vibe now about what Star Trek is in the season 4, then that gives me hope that maybe the Strange New Worlds won't be so bad. I mean, because let's keep in mind, Spock, Pike, I mean, we know these characters from years back. So they have that advantage there. Number one, same thing. Okay, so we're going to have some familiar characters, even though they're not played by the same actors, but we're going to have some familiar characters there to kind of ground, our Star Trek fandom on. And the stories are going to be in the style that they were made in the previous versions of Star Trek. You know, new episode per week, which will be nice. So maybe now, finally, after all of this crappy Star Trek stuff has been made, maybe now Star Trek might be worth tuning into. Okay, so I'm hoping that season 5 of Discovery might you know, take the next step up to be a much better series than season than 4 was, you know. And I'm hoping that's what they're going to do. I mean, I figured now was the time. It took too long. Okay, it seems like they've been developing the show when they should have developed it before they started. Okay, they've been doing this along the way because they were in a hurry to get it on the air, and now they've been developing it. So now they seem to know their footing better. Unfortunately, they wasted 3 years trying to find their footing with this cast here. But it seems like now they're finally getting to figure out what needs to be fixed here, and I'm hoping they keep the trend up. So I'm just going to keep my fingers crossed that, you know, maybe there's hope for Star Trek here. So this season 4 in a way was a hopeful ending to a new beginning, and I'm hoping that maybe that is the line where things start to turn around for the franchise, and maybe now finally we can start to get to watch some real Star Trek here, where, you know, we get to see things that we've kind of missed all these years, learning about and finding about things about characters and, you know, who these people are, and especially the aliens. We want to know as much about them as we want to know, as, you know, who are these people and what can they do and where they're from, and, you know, what's their worlds like and stuff. So yeah. Anyway, that's pretty much it. I just wanted to yak about that. So I hope everybody will have a great season here. I don't know when I'll be doing another one of these, but take care, everybody.